June 1876. The Montana Territory was a powder keg about to explode. Sitting Bull pressed his palms against the sun-baked earth of the Rosebud Creek Valley, his eyes closed in deep meditation. Around him, the largest gathering of Native American warriors in history was taking shape somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 Lakota Sioux. Northern Cheyenne and Arapaho people had converged in one massive encampment stretching for 3 miles along the Little Bighorn River. This wasn't supposed to happen. The U.S. government had ordered all Native Americans to report to reservations by January 31, 1876, or be considered hostiles. But Sitting Bull, the 45-year-old Hunkpapa Lakota holy man and leader, had refused. The Black Hills sacred land promised to his people in the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 had been invaded by thousands of gold prospectors after Custer's own expedition discovered gold there in 1874. The government wanted to buy the Black Hills. Sitting Bull's response was legendary. "I do not wish to sell any land to the government. Not even this much." He had gestured with his fingers, indicating not even a pinch of dust. Now, the U.S. Army was coming to force them onto reservations, but Sitting Bull had seen something. 2 weeks earlier, during the Sundance ceremony, he had performed the sacred ritual, giving 100 pieces of his own flesh as an offering. During his vision, he saw soldiers falling from the sky into the Lakota camp like grasshoppers falling upside down, their hats tumbling off. The vision was clear. A great victory was coming. But what Sitting Bull didn't know was that the most famous general in America was already planning his attack, and he was hungry for glory. If you want to hear the real story of what happened at Little Bighorn, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below if you've heard the Native American side of this story before. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer was a legend in his own mind. At 36 years old, the golden-haired officer had been the youngest general in the Union Army during the Civil War. He was fearless, ambitious, and absolutely convinced of his own invincibility. Newspapers called him the Boy General. His men had other names for him, some admiring, some not. On June 22, 1876, Custer rode out from Fort Abraham Lincoln with the 7th Cavalry Regiment, 31 officers, 566 soldiers, and 35 Arikara and Crow Scouts. His orders from General Alfred Terry were clear: locate the hostile camps and wait for reinforcements from General John Gibbon and Colonel John Gibbon's columns. But Custer had different plans. He wanted the glory for himself. 3 days later, on June 25th, Custer's scouts located the massive encampment along the Little Bighorn River. His Crow Scouts were terrified. "White man runs him," one of Custer's scouts later recalled. "We could see the pony herd extending for miles. I told Custer there were too many of them. He would not believe me." Custer saw his chance for immortality. He would attack immediately, before the other columns arrived. He would crush the hostiles in one dramatic cavalry charge, and the newspapers would make him a hero, maybe even president someday. He divided his regiment into 3 battalions. Major Marcus Reno would attack from the south. Captain Frederick Benteen would sweep from the west to prevent escape, and Custer himself would take 5 companies, about 210 men, and strike from the north, trapping the village between the 3 forces. It was a plan based on one fatal assumption: that the Native Americans would flee when attacked, as they usually did when facing overwhelming cavalry charges. Sitting Bull's people had other plans. At approximately 3 p.m., Major Reno's battalion charged into the southern end of the village. The soldiers expected to find women and children fleeing in panic. Instead, they rode into a storm of arrows and gunfire. Warriors swarmed from every lodge, many armed with repeating rifles, better weapons than the Army's single-shot Springfield carbines. Within minutes, Reno's charge became a desperate retreat. His men scrambled up the bluffs across the river, taking defensive positions, but they had lost a third of their force in less than an hour. What happened next would shock the entire nation and change American history forever. Meanwhile, Crazy Horse, the 35-year-old Oglala Lakota war leader, was organizing a response to Custer's northern approach. Crazy Horse was everything a warrior should be: brave, strategic, and completely devoted to protecting his people. He had fought in the Fetterman massacre 10 years earlier, where 80 soldiers had been killed. He knew how to defeat the U.S. Army. As Custer's 5 companies rode along the ridges toward the village, Crazy Horse and Gall, another brilliant Hunkpapa war leader, coordinated an attack that military historians still study today. They didn't just fight back, they executed a sophisticated tactical maneuver that would destroy Custer's entire command. From the village, to Moon, a northern Cheyenne chief, later described the moment. The women and children were running away. The men were gathering their horses and weapons. Then we saw the soldiers on the ridge, and Crazy Horse said, "Today is a good day to fight. Today is a good day to die." Custer had expected hundreds of warriors. He was facing thousands. As Crazy Horse led warriors up the ravines and coulees, using the terrain to hide their numbers, Custer's men began taking defensive positions on a hill. They shot their horses to create barricades, a sign of desperation. The animals they had ridden in on would now serve as their walls. But those walls wouldn't be enough. What happened in the next 45 minutes would become one of the most debated battles in American history, and the truth is more incredible than any Hollywood movie. Don't miss Part 2. The Battle of Little Bighorn lasted less than an hour for Custer's battalion, but its impact would echo through history for 150 years. Crazy Horse's tactical brilliance was on full display. While some warriors engaged Custer's soldiers from the front, he led hundreds of fighters in a flanking movement through the ravines. They surrounded Custer's position completely north, south, east, and west. There was no escape. The soldiers on Custer Hill fired desperately, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers and superior tactics. Warriors crawled through the tall grass, picking off soldiers one by one. Others charged on horseback, counting coup-touching enemies with sticks in acts of bravery while dodging bullets. One Lakota warrior named Wooden Leg later described the scene. "The shooting was quick, pop, 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 very fast. Some of the soldiers were running toward the river. We killed them there. But here's what most people don't know about this battleland. It changes everything. ... Smash that like button if you're learning something new. Subscribe and comment. Should this real story be taught more in schools? The soldiers' Springfield carbines had a fatal flaw. After sustained firing, the copper cartridges would expand in the heat and jam in the breech. Warriors reported seeing soldiers desperately trying to pry out stuck shells with knives. Meanwhile, many native warriors carried repeating Winchester and Henry rifles, weapons they had acquired through trade or captured in previous battles. The technological advantage the U.S. Army usually enjoyed had evaporated. Sitting Bull, though not directly involved in the fighting due to his role as a spiritual leader and older age, coordinated the defense of the women and children while directing the overall battle. His nephew, One Bull, later stated that Sitting Bull's presence and his prophecy had given the warriors absolute confidence. They believed the spirits were with them. By 5 p.m., it was over. Every single soldier in Custer's immediate command was dead, all 210 men. It was the U.S. Army's worst defeat in the Indian Wars. Among the dead was Custer himself, found with 2 bullet wounds, one in his left temple, one in his left chest. His body was not scalped or mutilated, possibly because some warriors didn't recognize him, or possibly out of respect for a brave enemy. The Lakota and Cheyenne had achieved the impossible. They had annihilated a U.S. cavalry regiment commanded by one of America's most famous officers. But the victory came at a terrible cost, though not immediately apparent. Native casualties were estimated between 36 and 136 warriors killed, with many more wounded. For a culture where every life mattered, where every warrior was a father, brother, or son, these losses were devastating. Among the dead was the son of Chief Gall, which drove him to fight with particular ferocity. As the sun set on June 25, 1876, the massive encampment celebrated their victory. They had defended their families, their land, and their way of life against the most powerful military in the Americas. Warriors danced and sang, recounting their brave deeds. Women mourned their dead and tended to the wounded. Sitting Bull knew the truth that many didn't want to acknowledge. Today we have killed Longhair Custer. Now the white men will never let us rest. They will hunt us down like wolves. He was right. News of Custer's last stand reached the American public during the 4th of July centennial celebrations. The nation was horrified and enraged. Newspapers called for total war against the savages. General William Sherman authorized an aggressive campaign to force all Native Americans onto reservations by any means necessary. Within a year, the great encampment had scattered. The army pursued the bands relentlessly, attacking villages in winter when families were most vulnerable, destroying food supplies and killing horses. The buffalo herds, the foundation of plains, Indian life, were being systematically exterminated to starve the tribes into submission. Crazy Horse surrendered in May 1877, bringing in 1,100 people. 4 months later, he was bayoneted to death while allegedly resisting arrest at Fort Robinson, murdered at age 36. Many believe he was assassinated to prevent him from leading any future resistance. Sitting Bull fled to Canada with his followers, but starvation and hardship forced him to surrender in 1881. He lived on the Standing Rock Reservation until December 15, 1890, when Indian Agency police sent to arrest him during the Ghost Dance movement shot and killed him. He was 59 years old. The Battle of Little Bighorn was the greatest military victory for Native Americans against the US government, but it was also the beginning of the end. The American government, humiliated by the defeat, unleashed unprecedented military force to crush Native resistance forever. Today, the battle is remembered differently depending on who tells the story. To many Americans, it's Custer's last stand, a tragic tale of soldiers overwhelmed by savages. To Native Americans, it's the Battle of Greasy Grass, a moment when they defended their homes, families, and freedom against an invading army that had broken every treaty it had ever signed. The truth: it was a battle between two peoples fighting for their survival, their way of life, and their vision of what America should be. Only one side had the numbers, technology, and governmental power to determine the outcome. What do you think? Was Little Bighorn a victory or a tragedy? Hit that subscribe button and comment your thoughts. Like this video if you want more real stories from American history that don't get told enough. Thanks for watching, and remember, history always has more than one side.